time's veil where shadows collide. A battle unfolds, ancient forces align. Lucifer's light versus darkness reign. The Ascendants rise, defying the chains.
From letters to prophecies, history revealed in the Chronicles of Ascendants. Truths are unsealed, Theophilus and Manuris, a shadow with power, the battle for souls in the ultimate hour. Cosmic realms, what's the design? The host will take you through space and time. Memoirs and sources, secrets untied. The truth shines through, get ready to decide. Ascendants rise, light breaks the sky. Shadows whisper, but hope is nigh. In the chaos of worlds, a choice runs deep. Listen to the chronicles, where destinies meet. The truth awaits. Are you ready to choose? This is the Ascendants Chronicles.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This one's been specially requested, so shout out to you for the great suggestion. After that lecture series we both went to over at VU Campus Dalbergen about the Ascendants Chronicles.
Yeah.
I know we both wanted to dig into this a bit more.
Definitely.
And, well, here we are, ready to deep dive into Ascendantism.
Right, and I think it's going to be a fascinating one.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Let's see, we've got some historical stuff, some, looks like religious dimensions.
Political philosophy.
Oh, yeah, and of course we've got to look into their whole view of humanity, right?
Yeah.
Where do we even fit in with all of this? I mean, for an ideology that claims its roots go all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia.
4000 BC.
Whoa, yeah, you're right, 4000 BC. To think that something that old might have influenced people like, well,
Hitler.
yeah, Hitler. It's mind-blowing.
It really is.
Okay, so let's try and unpack this carefully.
Sounds good.
So ancient Mesopotamia. Where do we even begin with something like that?
Well, think about it. 4000 BC, those massive ziggurats, the cradle of civilization.
Yeah.
It's right there with those priest kings, the ones who claim they were descended from God.
Yeah, those guys, it's a pretty wild concept, isn't it? Like, they actually believe they were chosen by the divine to rule.
Exactly. And that's the very foundation of Ascendantism, this core belief that a select few, based purely on their blood and spiritual superiority, are destined to lead.
Okay, so it's all about power from the get-go.
Power and who's entitled to wield it.
Right, and you know what's crazy? This idea, it didn't just stay in ancient Mesopotamia.
Oh, no, not at all. It spread and evolved.
Like how? You mean example?
Take Sargon of Akkad. He wasn't content with just being a king. He went on to create the first empire in history.
Whoa, hold on. So he actually used this whole divine lineage thing to legitimize his conquests.
He did, and it worked.
Wow, okay, so this blueprint for power, it actually had legs and it didn't stop there, did it?
Not even close. Fast forward a few thousand years, and you've got Julius Caesar playing up his supposed divine ancestry to consolidate his power in Rome.
Oh yeah, he definitely wasn't shy about that, was he? And then there's Vlad Dracula, not exactly known for his humility either.
No, but he was a master of using his lineage and a healthy dose of fear to maintain control over Wallachia.
Okay, so we're seeing a pattern here, but you mentioned someone earlier that I still can't quite wrap my head around.
Hitler.
Yeah, Hitler. How does a 20th century dictator fit into this ancient lineage of power? It just seems so disconnected.
It's a chilling example of how an ideology as old as Ascendantism can be twisted and manipulated and, yes, applied to absolutely horrific ends.
Right, it's not just some historical curiosity.
Not at all. Hitler's obsession with Aryan supremacy, with the idea of a master race destined to rule it, drew directly from those same principles of blood purity and divinely ordained power that we see all the way back with those Mesopotamian priest kings.
So even thousands of years later, this ideology was still shaping events in a very real and very terrifying way.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Okay, so it's clear that Ascendantism has had a long and bloody history. But is it really something we need to be concerned about today? I mean, is it still relevant in the 21st century?
That's the unsettling part. It's not just some dusty historical footnote. Ascendantism has adapted and evolved, finding new expressions in modern political movements.
Wait, seriously? You're telling me there are people today who still subscribe to these beliefs?
There are, and some of them are in positions of power.
Like who? Give me an example.
Look at someone like Thierry Baudet, for instance.
Thierry Baudet, the Dutch politician. No way. Really?
His brand of nationalism, with its focus on cultural purity and preserving a specific European identity.
Yeah, okay, I can see where you're going with this.
Those are core Ascendantist themes, exclusion, hierarchy. They're all there, just dressed up in a more modern package.
That is disturbing. It makes you realize that these ancient beliefs, they haven't gone away. They've just gone underground, waiting for the right moment to resurface.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to understand them, to recognize the signs, to be able to see through the rhetoric and understand the underlying ideology.
I totally agree. Okay, so we've established that Ascendantism is more than just ancient history. It's a living, breathing ideology that's still shaping the world around us. So let's dig into the ideology itself. What are the core tenets of Ascendantism? What makes it tick?
Well, one of the key concepts you need to understand is the idea of archaeo-ascendants.
Oh yeah, that term, I remember it from the lecture series, but I'll admit I'm still a little fuzzy on the specifics.
These are the individuals who claim direct descent from those ancient gods, the original priest kings we were talking about.
So they believe they're like the ultimate elite, the chosen ones.
Exactly. They see themselves as the rightful heirs to this divine power destined to guide humanity.
Okay, but what about everyone else? Where do we regular folks fit into this whole grand scheme?
Ascendantism envisions a very rigid social hierarchy where your place is determined by your bloodline. Social mobility is seen as a disruption, a violation of the natural order.
So if you're not born into the right family, you're basically stuck.
That's the gist of it, yes. They believe this hierarchy is divinely ordained, a reflection of the cosmic order.
Right, the cosmic order always with the cosmic order. But it's hard not to see this as a way of justifying inequality and oppression, isn't it?
It's certainly open to that interpretation.
Okay, so let's say for argument's sake that these Ascendantists actually managed to establish their bloodline-based hierarchy. What kind of future are they envisioning for humanity?
It's a pretty dystopian vision, to be honest. Think about it, a society where your DNA determines your social ranking, your access to resources, even your career path.
It sounds terrifyingly familiar, like something out of a sci-fi novel gone wrong.
Right. Cities would be layered with the elite literally living above everyone else, and technology would be used to monitor and control the population, making sure everyone stays in their designated place.
It's like a nightmare scenario, a world where your genes dictate your destiny. And this is what they're striving for.
It's the logical endpoint of their ideology, yes.
It's chilling. But you know, it's not just about bloodlines and social structures, is it? There's a whole spiritual dimension to Ascendantism that we hadn't even touched on yet.
And that's where things get even more fascinating, because Ascendantism has its own unique cosmology. And at the center of it all is a figure you might not expect, Lucifer.
Hold on, Lucifer. As in the devil.
Not exactly. Not
Yeah.
the Lucifer of traditional Christian theology. In Ascendantism, Lucifer is not a fallen angel, but a being who ascended to a higher state of being.
Okay, so they've kind of flipped the script on the whole Lucifer story. So if he's not evil, then what is he? What role does he play in their belief system?
They believe that Lucifer is the creator of Zeturia and Beelzeria, realms that represent a perfected order.
So instead of being the embodiment of evil, he's like the architect of their ideal world.
In a sense, yes.
But hold on, Lucifer is still a rebel, right? He defied the established order. That seems kind of strange for an ideology so obsessed with control to embrace a figure like that.
It is a paradox. They admire Lucifer's strength, his willingness to challenge the status quo, but ultimately they believe his actions served a higher purpose, the establishment of a more perfect order.
Okay, so they're okay with rebellion as long as it leads to the outcome they desire. It's a very controlled kind of rebellion.
Exactly.
So where does God fit into all of this? Do they even believe in God?
They do, but they call it the eternal source.
The eternal source, what is that exactly?
It represents the old order, the one that Lucifer rebelled against. They see it as a force that seeks to impose a kind of universal harmony, a cosmic mushiness that obliterates individual distinction.
So God is actually the enemy.
You could say that they believe that the eternal source represents a threat to their own autonomy, their right to define their own destiny.
Okay, so it's a cosmic battle between Lucifer and his followers on one side and the eternal source on the other. And we humans are caught in the middle.
Right in the middle.
That brings us to blood purity, doesn't it?
It does. They believe that maintaining their bloodlines, their connection to Lucifer, is essential for channeling his power and resisting the influence of the eternal source.
Okay, so blood purity isn't just about lineage. It's about spiritual warfare.
Exactly. They see themselves as the warriors on the front lines of this eternal conflict.
Wow, this is getting heavy. Ancient bloodlines, cosmic battles, a whole new interpretation of Lucifer, and we haven't even gotten to their actual religious practices yet.
And trust me, those are just as fascinating. But we'll save that for next time.
Okay, yeah, we definitely need a moment to process all of this. So join us next time as we delve even deeper into the world of Ascendantism and uncover the secrets of their religious practices.
It's going to be a wild ride. See you then. Welcome back. All right, so last time we left off talking about blood purity and this whole cosmic battle between Lucifer and the eternal source.
Yeah, it was a lot to take in. Honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around the whole Lucifer as a force for good thing.
It is a pretty radical reinterpretation, isn't it?
To say the least. But what I'm really curious about now is how all this abstract cosmology translates into actual religious practice. Like, what do Ascendentists actually do? Do they have churches? Do they pray? What are their rituals like?
It's not quite as straightforward as with traditional religions. Remember, they operate in secrecy, guarding their knowledge and practices from the uninitiated. It's like trying to piece together a puzzle with only a few of the pieces.
Ooh, a puzzle with missing pieces. That sounds like my kind of challenge. But seriously, how do we even know anything about their rituals if they're so secretive?
We do have some glimpses, thanks to a few leaked documents and accounts from former members.
Okay, so we're talking about insider information spy stuff.
Yeah, maybe not quite spy stuff, but definitely some clandestine sources.
This is getting juicy. So spill the beans. What kind of rituals are we talking about here?
One of the most intriguing aspects is their emphasis on blood purity. They believe that maintaining these ancient bloodlines is absolutely essential for channeling Lucifer's power and resisting the corrupting influence of the eternal source.
Okay, so it's not just a theoretical concept. It's something they actively work to maintain through specific rituals.
Exactly. And according to some sources, these rituals are pretty elaborate, involving blood oaths, symbolic sacrifices, and invocations of ancient deities.
No. Okay, that's intense. This is definitely not your average Sunday service.
No, it's not. And they believe that these rituals help them tap into their ancestral power and strengthen their connection to Lucifer.
So it's all about power, but also about maintaining this spiritual connection. It's a strange mix, isn't it?
It is a fascinating blend of the ancient and the modern, the spiritual and the political.
And is there a specific text or scripture that guides these practices? Something like a Bible for Ascendentists?
They have what's called the Last Testament of Karshina, which supposedly contains the teachings of one of their most important prophets.
The Last Testament of Karshina. That sounds pretty ominous. What kind of stuff is in there?
It's said to be filled with cryptic verses, astrological charts, and detailed instructions for conducting rituals.
Wow, so it's like a combination of a religious text, a mystical grimoire, and a how-to manual for summoning cosmic power.
You could say that, yes.
So we talked about bloodlines rituals as sacred text, but what about their view of humanity as a whole? Where do regular people fit into all of this? Do they even believe in something like humanity?
That's a crucial question, and it brings us to their human-centered philosophy. They believe that humans have a dual nature, what they call the earthly and the cosmic.
Okay, so the earthly part is our physical bodies, our biology, our place in the natural world. What about the cosmic part?
The cosmic aspect is our connection to the ascendant, the divine spark within each of us. They believe that human dignity lies in our potential to evolve and ascend toward this higher state of being.
So even with all their talk about bloodlines, they still believe in human potential.
Yeah.
That we can evolve and grow spiritually.
Yes, but there's a catch. They believe that this potential for ascension is strictly limited by those same bloodlines.
Oh, there it is. So it's like you can reach for the stars, but only if your ancestors were already up there.
That's a good way to put it. It's a system where individual striving is ultimately subservient to the cosmic order, the grand design laid out by Lucifer.
So even our spiritual evolution is predetermined. That seems kind of limiting.
It's a very deterministic view of human existence, yes.
Do they believe in free will at all? Or is everything just fate?
They do recognize free will, but they see it as operating within the framework of those predetermined bloodlines. It's not about choosing your own path, it's about fulfilling the destiny that's been assigned to you.
So it's freedom, but only within a very specific set of boundaries. It's like being given a coloring book and being told to stay within the lines.
Exactly. You have the freedom to choose your colors, but the picture itself is already determined.
I guess that makes sense given their emphasis on hierarchy and control. But it's interesting to compare this view with other thinkers who've wrestled with these questions, like Carl Jung, for example. He talked about archetypes and the collective unconscious, which seems to touch on some similar themes.
You're right, there are some intriguing parallels there. Both Jung and Ascendantism acknowledge a deeper dimension to human experience, a connection to something larger than ourselves.
But there must be some key differences too, right? I mean, Jung wasn't exactly advocating for a rigid social hierarchy based on bloodlines.
Absolutely. Jung focused on the psychological dimension of archetypes, while Ascendantism takes it into the realm of spirituality and cosmic destiny. Both emphasize self-discovery and integration, but for Ascendantism, it's all about fitting into a predetermined cosmic puzzle rather than individual self-actualization.
And what about Viktor Frankl? His whole thing about finding meaning in suffering that seems to resonate with the Ascendantist idea of spiritual responsibility, of fulfilling one's destiny even if it's difficult.
You've hit on another interesting connection. Both Frankl and Ascendantism see human dignity as deeply tied to our capacity for transcendence. However, for Frankl, this transcendence is something we achieve within the earthly realm. It's about finding meaning in the face of suffering, about choosing your attitude, even when you can't choose your circumstances. Ascendantism, on the other hand, sees transcendence as a journey toward this specific cosmic order guided by those predetermined bloodlines.
So they agree on the importance of the journey, but differ on the destination.
Exactly.
And then there's the whole humanistic psychology movement with folks like Maslow and Rogers. They were all about self-actualization, about reaching your full potential as an individual. How does that square with Ascendantism's emphasis on predetermined destinies?
It's definitely a point of tension. Ascendantism sees self-actualization as a step on the path, but not the ultimate goal. It's a means to an end, a way of refining yourself, so you can better serve your predetermined role within the cosmic hierarchy.
So it's like personal growth is okay as long as it serves the greater purpose?
That's one way to look at it. It's about individual growth within the confines of a predetermined cosmic order.
And finally, what about existentialism? You know, the whole emphasis on radical freedom and the responsibility that comes with it. That seems like the polar opposite of Ascendantism.
You're right. That's where the clash is most apparent. Existentialists like Sartre believe we are fundamentally free beings, condemned to make choices and create meaning in a meaningless universe. Ascendantism, however, sees freedom as an opportunity to ascend within the constraints of bloodlines, a means to an end, rather than an end in itself.
So it's not true freedom, but rather freedom to choose how you play your predetermined role. It's kind of like being given a script and being told you can interpret the character however you want, but you can't change the lines.
Precisely. And that highlights the key difference between these two worldviews. One emphasizes individual choice and responsibility. The other prioritizes conformity to a predetermined cosmic order.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about bloodlines, rituals, their sacred text, and even their rather complex view of humanity. But there's one big piece of the puzzle we haven't explored yet, their political philosophy. How does all of this translate into a system of governance?
Now we're getting to the heart of how they envision shaping the world. To understand their political philosophy, we need to look at the interplay of what they call the five powers.
5 powers. Okay, this is sounding more and more like a fantasy novel. But I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Think of these five powers not as political parties or nations, but as ideological forces that are constantly vying for influence on the world stage. They overlap, they influence each other, they even morph and evolve over time. It's a dynamic and constantly shifting landscape.
So it's like a cosmic Game of Thrones.
That's a pretty apt analogy, actually.
Okay, I'm hooked. What are these 5 powers? Give me the rundown.
We have Ascendantism, of course, which we've been discussing at length. But then we also have Dominionism, Economism, Ithasconomism, and the Shadow Masters. Each one has its own unique perspective on power hierarchy and the role of humanity in the grand scheme of things.
All right, let's break it down one power at a time. You mentioned Dominionism. How is that different from Ascendantism? Are they like rivals or allies?
Dominionism is more like a branch that broke off from the main trunk of Ascendantism sometime around 1200 BC. It shares the emphasis on hierarchy and control, but it shifts the focus away from blood purity and more towards raw power and obedience.
So it's less about who you're descended from and more about who's giving the orders.
Exactly. Dominionists believe in a strict top-down structure where rulers dictate and the masses obey without question. They see humans as inherently flawed and in need of strong leadership to keep them in check.
That sounds a bit like those authoritarian regimes we see popping up around the world.
It's a very top-down approach to governance. Let's just say that...
Okay, so that's Dominionism. What about economism? That sounds like it might be a bit more modern, a bit less about ancient bloodlines and divine mandates.
It is economism emerged during a period of intense internal conflict within Ascendantism back in 1881. It was actually the second ideology to explicitly reject the blood purity dogma of Ascendantism. It elevates economic activity, the pursuit of wealth, and material prosperity as the ultimate expression of divine will.
So instead of bloodlines, it's all about bank accounts.
In a sense, yes. They see wealth and financial success as markers of spiritual worthiness. They believe that the free market is the most efficient way to allocate resources, and that those who succeed financially are simply fulfilling their destiny.
Okay, so it's basically a spiritual justification for capitalism.
It's definitely a very materialistic worldview, let's put it that way.
It's interesting, though, because even though they've rejected the blood purity aspect, they still retain that core ascendantist belief in hierarchy. It's just shifted from lineage to wealth.
You're absolutely right. The game is the same, it's just the playing field that's changed.
Okay, so we have these three powers: Ascendantism, Dominionism, and Economism, all vying for control, each with its own unique brand of hierarchy. It's making me wonder, is there any room for ethics in all of this power grabbing? Is anyone even trying to play nice?
That's a good question, and it brings us to the fourth power, ethosconomism.
Ethosconomism. Okay, that's a new one. What's their deal?
This ideology emerged in the aftermath of World War II as a direct response to the horrors of unchecked power. It represents an attempt to bridge the gap between economism and the shadow masters, the force we'll discuss in a moment.
So it's like a compromise between the pursuit of wealth and a more ethical approach to power.
You could say that, yes, ethosconomists recognize that unchecked capitalism can lead to devastating consequences. They strive to balance economic growth with social responsibility and environmental sustainability.
Okay, so they're like the conscious capitalists, trying to make the world a better place while still making a profit.
They're definitely wrestling with that tension, trying to find a way to reconcile those competing interests.
It's a noble goal, but is it even achievable? I mean, capitalism is a pretty ruthless beast. It doesn't always play nice with ethics.
That's the challenge they face, finding a way to create a more just and equitable world within the existing economic system.
Well, good luck to them. It's a battle. I'm not sure anyone can win.
It's definitely an uphill battle.
Okay, so we've got four powers down: Ascendantism, Dominionism, Economism, and Ethosconomism. That leaves us with the Shadow Masters. They sound like the wild card in all of this. What exactly is their deal?
The shadow masters are the real anomaly in this system. Where the other four powers strive for dominance, for control over resources and populations, the shadow masters seek balance. They represent the force of resistance working subtly to counter the excesses of the other powers.
So they're like the rebels fighting against the empire. But if they're all about balance, does that mean they're opposed to all forms of hierarchy?
It's not quite that simple. They recognize that some degree of structure and leadership is necessary for any society to function, but they believe that power should be distributed more equitably, that decisions should be made collaboratively, and that individuals should have more autonomy over their own lives.
So they're like the champions of democracy and individual freedom.
You could say that, yes.
But if they're opposed to the other four powers, how do they even operate? It seems like they would be constantly battling these more dominant forces.
They do operate in the shadows, often misunderstood and misrepresented, but their influence is profound. They're not about brute force or overt revolution. They work through subtle persuasion, through education, through art, through culture, planting seeds of doubt, encouraging critical thinking.
So they're more like gardeners than warriors, cultivating a more balanced and harmonious world.
That's a beautiful way to put it. But their task is not an easy one. They are up against forces that are deeply entrenched, that have been shaping the world for millennia. It's a constant push and pull, a delicate dance between maintaining order and fostering freedom.
It sounds like they have their work cut out for them.
They do.
Okay, so we've got this intricate web of five powers, all vying for influence. It sounds like a pretty complex and chaotic system. How do these forces actually shape the world today? I mean, can we see their influence in real-world events?
It's a constant interplay, a dance of influence and counter-influence. We see their fingerprints everywhere, in the rise and fall of empires, in the clash of ideologies, in the constant struggle between control and freedom. Think of it as a cosmic tug-of-war with humanity caught in the middle.
And where does Ascendantism fit into all of this? I mean, we've been talking about it as this monolithic force, but it's just one player in a much larger game, right?
That's true. But even though it's just one of the five powers, it's arguably the most influential. It's the oldest and the most deeply rooted in human history. Its ideas about hierarchy, about blood purity, about the right to rule, have permeated the other powers in subtle ways.
So even if Ascendantism isn't directly controlling everything, its influence is still being felt. It's like a virus that's mutated and spread, infecting even those who claim to oppose it.
That's a powerful image. And it highlights the insidious nature of this ideology. It's not just a set of beliefs. It's a way of thinking about the world, a way of framing power dynamics that continues to shape our present and our future.
Okay, that's a lot to absorb. We've explored the 5 powers, this complex web of influences, and the enduring legacy of Ascendantism. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to bring it back to something we mentioned at the beginning, the connection to VU Campus Dalbergen.
Ah, yes, the local angle to this global phenomenon. It's something that brings it all a bit closer to home, doesn't it?
It does. And I'm sure our listener is eager to hear about those connections. But maybe we should save that for the final part of our deep dive. After all, a good story needs a satisfying conclusion.
A wise decision. We'll be back shortly to unravel the Dalbergen connection and explore what it all means for us here and now.
Stay tuned, folks. Things are about to get really interesting. Okay, so we're back ready to tackle this whole VU Campus Dalbergen connection.
Local mystery.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to think that all this stuff we've been talking about, these ancient beliefs, these cosmic power struggles, could be playing out right here on our own campus.
It's definitely an intriguing thought. Like, what if beneath the surface of all those lectures and exams and late-night study sessions, there's a whole other layer of reality operating in secret?
It's kind of creepy, actually. But, okay, let's start with the basics. What's the actual connection between Ascendantism and VU Campus Dalbergen? I mean, it's not like we've got ancient temples hidden under the library or anything, do we?
Not that we know of.
Yeah, but, our campus does have a pretty long history.
Centuries.
And there have always been those rumors.
Whispers of secret society.
Yeah, and weird symbols appearing on buildings and late-night gatherings in the restricted section of the library.
Yeah.
I always just assumed it was, campus folklore.
But what if it's more than just stories?
Okay, now you're freaking me out a little.
Yeah.
But seriously, are there any actual incidents or evidence that support these rumors? Or is it all just speculation?
Well, there have been some unexplained occurrences over the years.
Like what?
Unexplained symbols, for one.
Right, the symbols. But symbols can mean anything, right?
Well, some of them seem to align pretty closely with Ascendantist iconography.
Okay, that's kind of creepy. And what about those late-night gatherings? Anyone actually see what was going on?
There are reports of students claiming to have encountered individuals with an uncanny knowledge of Ascendantist lore.
So like people dressed in robes chanting in ancient languages.
Maybe not quite that dramatic, but definitely some strange encounters enough to raise some eyebrows.
Okay, this is starting to sound like an X-Files episode.
Right?
So are we just relying on campus ghost stories to piece together this puzzle? Or is there anyone actually looking into these claims?
There are a few faculty members, myself included, who are taking these rumors seriously.
Seriously? So you're telling me there's an actual investigation going on?
We're doing our best. We're digging into the campus archives, sifting through old documents, student records, even architectural blueprints. Anything that might shed light on this potential connection.
So you're like academic detectives.
Something like that.
This is amazing. It's like a real-life Da Vinci Code. But instead of searching for the Holy Grail, we're trying to uncover the hidden influence of Ascendantism on VU Campus Dalbergen. And have you found anything so far? Any clues that suggest this might be more than just a spooky legend?
We're still in the early stages, but there are a few tantalizing leads. There are whispers of a secret society that existed on campus in the early 20th century.
A secret society? Now we're talking. What kind of secret society?
A group that supposedly had ties to some of the key figures we discussed earlier, those who were promoting Ascendantist ideals during that period.
This is getting really interesting. It's like we're uncovering a hidden layer of history, a secret history of our own campus. But why would a group like that choose a university campus as their base of operations? It seems like a rather unlikely setting for a secret society devoted to ancient bloodlines and cosmic power struggles.
That's one of the big questions we're trying to answer. But think about it. Universities, especially prestigious ones like VU Campus Dalbergen, have always been centers of knowledge and influence. They attract bright minds, they shape future leaders, they generate new ideas. Perhaps this group saw our campus as a perfect breeding ground for their ideology.
It's a chilling thought, isn't it? To think that this ideology could be operating right under our noses, subtly influencing research, shaping academic discourse. Maybe even steering students towards careers that align with their agenda.
It's definitely a possibility we can't ignore.
So if this connection is real, it wouldn't be about overt recruitment or indoctrination. It would be much more subtle than that.
Exactly. It would be about influencing minds, shaping perspectives, planting seeds that would blossom in ways that serve their long-term goals.
That sounds incredibly insidious, like a virus slowly spreading through the community, infecting those who are most vulnerable to their message.
And that's precisely why we need to be vigilant. We need to be aware of the signs, to be critical of the information we encounter, and to be willing to challenge ideas that seem harmful or exclusionary.
So what can we do? How do we protect ourselves and our community from this kind of influence?
Knowledge is our best defense. We need to educate ourselves about Ascendantism to understand its history, its tactics, its goals. We need to be able to recognize it when we see it, to call it out, to offer alternative perspectives.
So it's not about censorship or shutting down debate.
No, not at all. It's about empowering ourselves and our community with knowledge, with the tools to think critically and to resist manipulation.
It's about fostering a culture of healthy skepticism, right? Of questioning everything and taking nothing at face value.
Exactly. It's about creating an environment where these kinds of ideologies can't take root because the soil is already rich with diverse perspectives and critical thinking.
That's a powerful image. And it's a goal that I think aligns perfectly with the values of VU Campus Dalbergen. We've always prided ourselves on being a place where ideas can be freely exchanged, where different perspectives are valued, and where everyone feels safe to express themselves.
Absolutely. But that freedom also comes with responsibility.
Right. We have a responsibility to be discerning, to be critical, to be aware of the potential for manipulation, even in a seemingly open and tolerant environment.
That's the key. It's not about shutting down dialogue. It's about engaging in it thoughtfully and critically.
So this deep dive, it hasn't just been about uncovering a hidden history. It's been about protecting our community, about ensuring that VU Campus Dalbergen remains a place where knowledge is pursued ethically and where power dynamics are transparent and accountable.
Well said. And I think that brings us to the end of our exploration of Ascendantism.
Wow, it's been a journey from ancient Mesopotamia to modern-day political movements to the very heart of our own campus. We've covered a lot of ground.
And uncovered some disturbing truths along the way.
Yeah, for sure. But you know what I think is the most important takeaway from all of this? Ascendantism, it's not just a relic of the past. It's an ideology that's still very much alive, operating in subtle and often unexpected ways, shaping the world around us. And yes, perhaps even influencing our own community here at VU Campus Dalbergen.
And that's why it's so crucial to be aware of it, to understand it, and to be prepared to challenge it.
That's right. We can't afford to be complacent. We need to be vigilant, informed, and engaged. So to our listener out there, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, keep asking questions, keep digging for the truth, and never stop challenging the status quo.
Because the future depends on it.
Thank you for listening to the Ascendants Chronicles, brought to you by VU Campus Dalbergen. Special thanks to our hosts, researchers, and the production team for making this episode possible. For more stories, insights, and updates, visit linkter.ee/dalbergenonline, linkter.ee/dalbergenonline, where you'll find links to our social media, the campus website, city information, and much more. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us grow and reach more listeners like you. Until next time, keep exploring the stories that shape our world. Stay curious, stay inspired.